Welcome to Raf's Cast, Tales from Mohawk ad. This time we have Chenice Piercy, Associate Creative Director at Angry Butterfly and former alumni of the program, coming to talk to us, myself, and a second year creative student, Maggie Matian. So we're going to start right now. This is episode 4, and we have 2 more episodes until the end of season 3 after this one. All right, let's start. This is Raf's Cast, Tales from Mohawk ad. Today I have the pleasure to have with me here Chenice Piercy, and am I correct? Pierce?
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
correct.
And Margaret Matian.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Oh my God. I also have almost always have trouble saying that kind of stuff. So Shanice is ACD for Angry Butterfly right now, and you're alumni from 18, 19? 19.
2019.
Yes, class of 19, and so just before the pandemic. So it's
Yeah.
great to have you here. And Maggie is a second year creative student on her 4th semester right now.
Yep. Yep.
Just more a few 2 months until break and starting the third year.
Oh, yeah.
So we're starting today to talk about with you, Shanice, because I think, and I asked Maggie to come here because I think you guys have a lot in common when it comes to that time of the school year when you were in second year. I remember exactly how you were. I remember you sit near the wall in the Mac lab. Am I correct?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So I remember this whole spectrum of things, but I will start saying first. Let's start with this. What made you decide, Shanice, to start in at the college? So, what made you come to? Oh, gonna make an advertising. I'm gonna go to an advertising program.
That's a good question. I had always been creative growing up. I'm an only child, so I feel like that made me have a big imagination, always like playing by myself, creating these imaginary worlds. And I, out of high school, I went to school. I tried 1 year for performing arts preparation. And while it was really cool and it was great to learn all the different aspects of theater, I just decided that I wanted something that had a more stable career. You know, Acting and directing, all of that sounded really interesting and a bit, glamorous, but then there was the other side where you might be looking for work and, you know, always struggling to get by. So I worked for a few years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something creative, but I didn't know how I could get paid to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered advertising. This girl I worked with at a coffee shop, she was going to a different college for advertising. And I started to look around and realize advertising was so creative and really interesting. And that led me to Mohawk because it seemed like one of the best programs out there in Canada. Um, and I'm glad I made that choice.
Good to hear. Once we started, I want to talk with you about Tribal EDB. How was that college internship already? How was that thing? Can you?
uh, yeah, it was a whirlwind because I wasn't expecting, to have an internship after my first year, which was pretty crazy.
It was for the National Advertising Challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah,
For
it
NEC.
was. Yeah,
So
so
you won that year on first
yeah,
year.
yeah. So I was pretty nervous about the prospect of taking an internship. I actually was debating not doing it because it was a scary, intimidating idea, right? Like I was dabbling with software on my own end, like outside of first year classes. I was trying to learn as much as I could, but I was nervous that I wouldn't actually be ready to go into an agency and, actually deliver when I was briefed on something. But I decided to take a risk and I thought, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like I fail and I learn from it. So I ended up going to Tribal, and I loved it. It was really cool to sort of work on all different brands. And I just kind of learned as I went, like I sort of faked it till I made it. So if I didn't know how to do something, I would Google it, I would figure it out. Of course, I would ask for help from a technical side, talking about like art direction skills, like
Mhm.
Photoshop and things like that. But it was a really great experience. I got to work on brands like Kraft, McDonald's, Volkswagen, Crime Stoppers, all different stuff. So, yeah, it was a really cool experience. And it definitely, I think, made me even more motivated to keep going with school and build an awesome book in second and third year.
So they took into consideration that you're just fresh at first year and got that. So how was your first day there? Do you remember your first day going to Throw?
Yeah, my first day, it was cool. There was lots of people to meet because the way Tribal was set up at the time was it shared the same office as DDB, which is like the parent company of it. So
Hmm.
the whole creative department was like intertwined. So it was DDB and Tribal's creative department. So I got to meet everyone. And I actually ended up getting thrown on briefs for DDB as well, not just Tribal. So I ended up meeting lots of different people that first day, but of course, it's so many people and it's the first time you're in an agency and I hadn't done any tours because I was just out of first year. I hadn't really seen an agency in person before. So that was like, whoa, there's so much going on. But my boss now, Erin Kawalecki, she was she was the person I worked with most there. And so I remember meeting her and she was super nice and welcoming. And obviously that made an impression because I work for her now. So
Well,
yeah, connections are important. So yeah.
I think the most important thing here was that you have the gut to take a first year internship and went with it. I think that's the thing that definitely would impress anyone going creative. That oh my god, it's just fresh at first year. She came here and won the NEC, and I think was amazing of you. And I want to know what changed in your mindset when you came back to the college. Like, oh my god, now I need to relearn things. Things are different.
So I would say that it definitely helped me be even more driven. I think by having some experience in the real world, I knew that I liked it, which was really great. And I wanted to make sure that when my book was going out into the world that it was something that I could feel proud of every piece. So I really tried to push my art direction and like conceptual thinking as far as I could. I think that seeing people in the real world really helped motivate me even further. And I think going back to college was nice too, because I actually did get offered a job at the end of my internship and I turned it down. Instead of taking a full time role, I decided to go back to school because I wanted that piece of paper and I wanted to feel like proud of finishing the program because I felt like I still had so much to learn. And I'm glad I went back to school because I did learn a lot. And I think that that was really important for my career in the long run.
Amazing to hear. So, on the last 2 years of the college, then I want to ask you, how was that fear of preparing your portfolio, preparing your book, third year with Jeff, and the back and forth, and putting together everything, and that kind of a relationship in the class? I know the class begins to develop a tension who gets internship, who doesn't, and it's kind of it's cool, but at the same time, there's a lot of pressure on you guys. So how was that whole process?
So I think that the process, it can be stressful, and I will admit that for some students it's harder for some students, sorry, than it is for others. I think some people, get more stressed and worked up over it, and I think that it all comes down to certain, projects that you have in your book. But I will say that I think the environment that you and Jeff, have built, where you have these different things that you're working towards to really build your portfolio and make it the best it can be, it's really like reflective of the real world, because in the industry, you're competing against other creatives who want the same job as you, or other creatives at different agencies, and we're all trying to come up with, the best ideas and get work out into the world. So I think it's an important kind of step where you see how the industry can be competitive, and it can be, fast paced. And so some students do get internships sooner than others, but I think it's a really great experience, and I had a great time with like my classmates. We had a healthy competition, I think, where we all wanted the best for each other, but we also
Mhm.
wanted to be as good as we could be as individuals as well.
I will let Maggie ask a question now, if you want to, about the end year before we get more into the professional career of Shanice.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
um, Actually, while you were talking about, doing an internship right away in first year and making that decision to turn down the employment and going back to school, which class would you say was the class that really made you feel like, yeah, I made the right decision in staying and completing this program?
So I would say it was a combination. I would say that the classes in general, as you really start to focus in, obviously second and third year, you choose to be in the creative stream. It's really hard to say one specific class. I think just the experience in general of building your portfolio, and I think especially as you get into maybe the back half of second year and third year, you're really, every class is focused a lot on, the pieces that are going in your book. So I think I tried to treat every project like it could be a potential thing that I could put in my portfolio. I started to look at things like portfolio pieces instead of assignments. So I don't think there was one class to answer your question, but I do think as like a whole, it was very important.
Yeah. Awesome.
One more, Maggie.
One more. Okay, so I did also have a question, kind of like more internship related, because that is something like I'm looking forward to obviously in the future. So I have a question of like how hands on it was for you as an intern in first year. Like how involved were you in the projects, and what that experience was for you? How was that for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I would say that everything I did, I was hands on with. So, of course, I had a lot of smaller briefs in terms of what came on my plate. I had my fair share of emails, of social posts, of things like that. But I think that was really important because it helped build like foundational art direction craft with. I got to like play around with layouts and learn more about typography and try things in Photoshop. So I got to be hands on, and then I did get to be involved in some bigger projects as well. I got to, be a part of a big campaign they did for Crime Stoppers, and I got to actually do the art direction for a big component of the campaign that was created. So I think when you're in an internship, if you're eager and you try to get your hands involved in as many things, people will give you things because you're not there to be perfect. You're there to learn. You're there to show that you're passionate. And, I think that that's what is the best thing you can try and get from an internship is be involved in as many things, asked to go to all the meetings, try to sit on production briefings, on in shoots, in VO records, even if you're an art director, try to do as many things as you can.
Wow. Yeah. That's really great advice.
Let's go back, Shanice, now to that time when you got a few interviews and offers and everything and have to decide and get to go to LG2 with Danielle, with Danny.
Yeah, with Danielle.
Danielle, yes. So tell me about that story.
Yeah, so actually what happened for us is we started to we were friends in second year. We started to work more and more together, and we decided, let's try and find an internship as a team. I know sometimes, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some students will try go as a team, some independent. So we're like, let's try and see, worst case scenario, we go off on our separate ways. So we actually we started meeting with some people. We met with a team from McCann. We met someone at BBDO, and then we actually were at the ADCCs, and we ran into Devin and Kendra, who were
Mhm.
art director copywriter team at the time at LG2. And then we just got chatting, and I think Raph, you might have, or Jeff, one of you introduced us to Devin and Kendra. So that's how we got talking at the ADCCs. And we
Yeah,
just started chatting. We let them know, we're a team, we're looking for an internship. And then,
we always help
um,
you guys with networking when we
yeah,
get
they
here.
were, yeah, it was great. So it was all through networking. And then a few days later, we got an email from the creative director at LG2 at the time, who asked us, uh, would you send us your books? And then we kind of got a little bit of a conversation going, and we went in for an interview with them, which was in December, because the way it kind of worked for us is we were just meeting with people and networking, and then that one chat at the ADCCs turned into our internship ultimately, because we met with the CDs at LG2, and they liked our books, and so they offered us an internship, and we took it. So there wasn't too much like back and forth for us. We didn't have other offers. We liked the idea of trying an independent agency, a smaller agency,
Mhm.
and so that was what we chose to do.
Before going to details about LG2, can you tell Maggie about your list of awards for as a student?
So I obviously in first year I did the NACs, so that was really cool. I won gold and bronze in the same year, so that was pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Didn't I didn't like, wasn't expecting that at all, or any of it. So that was crazy. And then in second and third year, um, I had some awards from the one show. I think I got a couple merits at the one show,
Mhm.
and some merits at the ADCCs, and then also applied arts as well. So a smattering, I guess, of different ones. And then the
Mhm.
craziest thing was the project I um, helped do the art direction for in my internship won a gold illustration at ADCCs, and also won a bunch of other awards. So then I had like real world awards as well as student
Oh,
awards at the same time.
on the same show.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's amazing. How how different it was to get from LG from the tribal GDB to then finish your program and going to LG2 and getting there. How was it?
It was a world of difference. It was so different. It was I at the time I when Danielle and I were there, it was just over 30-person office. LG2 has the Montreal office, the Quebec City, and Toronto. So the Toronto was like the newest addition. LG2
Hmm.
is a Quebec-based agency that expanded into Ontario.
Hmm.
So when we joined, it was just over 30 people. So it was a lot different. there was whole account teams, whole different subsections of business with tribal DDB that wasn't a thing at LG2. It was a mixture of clients. There was a lot of smaller clients versus working on McDonald's or Volkswagen. I was working on Manchu Wok, which is a fast food chain in food courts. I was working on LCBO Social. I did some work for Purple Bricks, which is like a real estate company. So it was very different from the type of client work that I was doing. I was seeing smaller brands or smaller projects. I learned at LG2 to be very scrappy, to not rely on big budgets or illustrators that could do stuff for me or photographers or all of these things, which of course you have sometimes, but it taught me to figure out how to do things myself as well, which was cool. So it was really different. And there was only one set of creative directors, which were the ones that hired me and Danielle, Nellie, Kim, and Chris Hirsch. And then we had also a creative director of design as well. So it was a lot smaller.
Talking about that, how was the work there? You get one brief at a time, or they put you in multiple briefs at different stages? How was it?
So we had multiple briefs at once. Um, there was definitely a different energy versus a larger network agency. It felt like you had to, there was more teams, so not everyone knew what you were working on at all the time. But at LG2, naturally with it being smaller, you knew more about what other people's projects were, what other people knew what was on your plate a little bit more. And so that was a little bit different. And we did get multiple projects at the same time. Like we would have a social brief to come up with, post for Manchu Walk, and then we would have a social brief for Under Armour, and then at the same time we might be in the moving into the production stage of working on some social posts for LCBO. So it was a lot of smaller briefs like social posts, which isn't uncommon for an internship anyways. But I would say that it was good. You got to juggle some briefs still, and there was some room to kind of come up with some bigger ideas as well. Try to think of an award-winning idea as well, which is hard in the real world for sure.
Well, and after a few months, you guys got hired by Ogilvy. So tell me about that change.
Yeah, so we had a great time at LG2. But we at the as our internship was wrapping up, our official internship had actually ended at that stage, and we had spoken with Brian Murray, who was the chief creative officer at the time at Ogilvy, and I think both of us were sort of itching for a new experience. Danielle hadn't, she'd only experienced LG2 versus a few years previous. Then I had, been at a bigger agency. And
I
so
see.
we decided to try something a little bit different, we were just starting our career. So we just wanted to like try different things and see what we liked. And Ogilvy seemed to have a lot of opportunity and different clients to try out. They have tons of different brands that we worked on. So I think that we were able to get a lot of experience there.
Oh, we got to hear the list: IBM, Pizza Hut, Rogers, American Express, Hellman's, Advil, Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, the Pan, Cowboy Carmilk, and so on, so on, so on. I can't imagine having all those briefs in your lap and having to do creative. It's amazing. So, how was the experience of working on one of the biggest advertising chains on the planet?
It was it was really cool. It was a very different world than LG2, very different pace. And being able to have all these different brands at your fingertips was super cool as well. And I think that because they were a bigger agency, or they are a bigger agency, there was a lot of opportunities coming through the door. And so juniors were able to get their hands on some of those opportunities. And just being able to work on such a variety of brands. I worked on American Express day to day. I also worked on Pizza Hut and Caramilk. And then I also worked on Kotex, a tampon brand. So it was like a whole different roster of clients, which was cool.
I will ask a question, and I think this question goes for Maggie too, and all the students who are listening. How it is when you start working for you, and from I can imagine how many coffees and lunch breaks that you have with different people on those agencies. How is the saying that you're seeing now as an ACD? We're coming back to the ACD position later, but you see this person is working right. I think I will give more briefs to this person because the outcome of everything when it comes to all the aspects is great. So, what kind of suggestions and when you learn like, oh, I need to, I think this is the best way to optimize and deliver good work. Besides being a creative person, and I know you're very good and creative, Janice. So go ahead.
I think that outside of your actual ability or, ambition to come up with creative ideas and all of that side of it, I honestly think it comes down to this, I guess you would call them soft skills. Like, do you stay on top of emails or Slack messages, especially in this world of hybrid where you're either work from home or you're partly in the office? Staying on top of communication and just being a good communicator is so important. Let your creative director know, or your team know, that you've done something or you've addressed the feedback. Just doing simple things like that as an intern shows that you're on top of your projects. So even if you are not perfect every time with every project, because no one is, at least you're keeping your team in the loop. Ask questions. If you're stuck, go to your creative director, go to another art director on the project or whoever and say, hey, can you help me understand this? Or, because I think like one of the biggest things is when you're just starting out, it's better to ask questions than to try and figure something out and not do the right thing. Yeah, I would say that being an intern, it is a lot of the soft skills. Speak up if you feel overwhelmed. Don't be like a superhero if you're drowning. There's sometimes, depending on the agency, there's creative resourcing managers that are an amazing thing where they manage your projects and they tell you, you're getting briefed on this, or you go to them and say, I'm busy, I'm too busy, I can't handle this, or all of those things. Communicating with your account directors, your strategists, it's all about being a team player. So even though you're a part of the creative department that's actually creating the work, you all work together. So I think for me, like when I see interns and juniors, the biggest thing is, are you trying? Are you trying your best? Because I think that's the most important thing. And then the rest of it is like, just be a good human, I guess. Be a nice person. And then being a nice person will get you so far, I think, at least.
Well, the thing is, Shanice, is being a nice person is not something that you teach at school, and I think that people don't realize that sometimes. Uh, Talking about Slack, the automation in Slack, Slack save us on the agency, on the college agency for the pandemic. We did everything through Slack, and now it's there for good now. We are using
Oh,
nonstop.
cool.
Yeah, so it was an amazing tool, and the students are liking it. And yeah, so I will. Maggie, have any questions about so far about Ogilvy or the work or anything that we just had here?
Yeah. So when you were handling, when you said that like Ogilvy was kind of like a different pace for you, how many briefs would you say you were handling at any given time?
I would say that an average would be maybe 5 or 6 different briefs. And they're different scales. And, of course, every brief has different timelines. So I might have had maybe 2 different emails to
You
do
look,
for
you look,
American
you look
Express.
scared, Maggie. Such a low stick. She
I
was like,
know, it's so
oh.
true. I know. No, it definitely like it's it's a balancing act, time management is super important. But yeah, it could be like a couple emails, a social post, maybe something that has a bit more thinking behind it. So it could be a whole like smorgasbord of different things, I guess.
And what was your favorite kind of brief to work on, if you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my favorite brief still, it's always going to be one that I can try to turn into uh, a a strong conceptually based idea. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like the shining opportunity in the brief. I like when I can try and like turn something into, something that could be good. I think anything where you're not like told it has to be an email or it has to be social or it has to be this, like when you kind of are free to think, oh, that's a cool new tech, maybe we could use that, or this is an interesting thing. And when you're able to kind of observe culture and society and try and really make that a part of your idea, I think is my favorite kind of brief.
Cool.
Janice, when you start to understand, like, oh my God, I can buy that font, I can hire that photographer, I can get. When those things begin to realize that you, then you say, I can do anything now because I can have a team of a lot of people who put my vision into reality are the production company to commercials, or how was that?
Yeah, that was I feel like I definitely it took me a long time to realize that, what other amazing creative people I had at my fingertips. Probably not until a couple years ago. I was working on a Canadian Tire spot and was writing the script with my partner, and it was like, oh yeah, we can shoot that, because I was so used to like, oh, we can't do this or we can't shoot that or we have no budget. And so it was kind of that moment where I realized, oh, we can go in and do this, or we can add another actor. We have the money to pay another actor, because sometimes you might only have like VO or whatever. And I think when I was on set that day, it was the biggest production I had been a part of, and there was, I don't know, maybe like 50 people there for the crew. And I saw like how many people were there between like the director and his team and like the actual camera operators and set designers and prop stylists and all of these people. And I was like, wow, this all came out of one little script, and now it's this whole thing. So that was a cool experience for me to sort of be like, oh yeah, I can hire a photographer, or I can ask, we can hire an illustrator or whatever.
Can you tell me the starting of the totally changing the subject? This was great insight, by the way. Totally changing the subject. How was the starting of the pandemic when you were there and everybody, don't come to the agency, let's work from home, and how was that thing? And how do you think it changes? Because now you're working in a way that everything's
Yeah.
about that. So let's start with when it started.
So, I mean, like probably most people, we all thought we were going to be back in the office the week after or 2 weeks or whatever. And I left my plants at the office and they died. So I
Oh,
thought I was going right back. And it's funny because for me, obviously, with Mohawk being in Hamilton, I lived in Hamilton for school, and I kind of always knew I was going to have to move to Toronto at some point. And I was getting to the point where I was like, I can't commute every single day anymore. This is like, for me, it was just getting a lot taking the train there. And so I had just moved to Toronto the month before the pandemic started. And so I was like, I'm finally in the city. I can finally like get to work in a few minutes. And then the pandemic hit and it changed everything. And suddenly we were working from home. And at first, we were all trying to adapt to this way of working where we couldn't just have a conversation face to face, or my creative director couldn't circle something on the layout and say, change this, or sit beside me and help me, or, just those kind of things where you take for granted those small little gestures or things that really help you, especially as a junior. I think just having face to face time with, creative directors and other people. So it really pushed you. And I think there was like a period where lots of people were like getting a little burnt out from trying to be creative at home, but I think it really pushed us to kind of adapt and develop new models. And now it's kind of crazy to think, but I'm so used to working from home. But you can't replace in-person brainstorming. I think being in person with someone is still really important, but yeah, it changed a lot, and I think it made work a little bit more flexible for some people. I made the decision to move back to the Hamilton area, which is great for me, but I just didn't need to be in Toronto. I work from home, so it allowed me a lot more flexibility in life outside of work, which is kind of interesting. And with work, I think we found ways, it's easy enough to hop on a Google Meet now. We're used to it. We have Slack. Um, Everything is accessible. We found ways to adapt. And I think that in some ways it made us better. I would say in other ways, maybe it can be a bit of a challenge for juniors. I'm trying, like, I'll try to make sure I like try to give a real world or in person, sorry, experience for them as much as possible, because it is I do think that you do maybe miss something by not having those brainstorms in person, or not being able to sit with another art director and have them show you how they like craft something on their screen, or how they set type, or all of these little things. So I do think that for juniors there is some barriers that I think we can't ignore, for interns and juniors, students trying to get into the industry. So I think it's just about now recalibrating that, where lots of agencies are hybrid, figuring out how to not have people left behind or not learning in the ways that they need to learn. So that's what at least my agency we're trying to, make sure doesn't happen. Oh, I don't think I can hear you.
Sorry about that. You almost spent 2 years at Ogilvy, and then I want to ask you what made you through midway through the pandemic to change to Angry Butterfly, that it was almost starting at a time, isn't
Yeah. So I had a great time at Ogilvy, and I feel like I was able to do a lot. I'm like proud of the work that I did there. And I just felt like there was a lot of change, there was a lot of change in people's personal lives and in the work world. I think that the pandemic just made people rethink things, or, you know, things, people moved around. And I think I just got to a point where I was comfortable, but I had become too comfortable. And I think I needed a little bit of a change to, shake things up.
it? I see. I know the feeling
Yeah.
that you want new environment and everything. So
Yeah.
and then you contact them? They contact you, networking? How was it?
So my sorry, my words. So Erin, who is the CCO at Angry Butterfly, we had met at Tribal. She was the CD there, and who was, the one who had offered me a job and I had turned down. And so Erin actually reached out to me in October of 2020, and she sent me a message and just told me, she and her partners were starting an agency, and these are kind of the clients that
Wow.
gonna have. And so she asked me if I'd like to chat, and I wasn't actually actively applying for anything. I was just, you know, going through the motions, and so we spoke, and I decided to take a leap of faith on a startup agency, which was a big decision.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think it's a big responsibility to get into a startup agency and build the name with the team. How was that feeling? How is that feeling, actually?
Yeah, you're right. It is a lot of responsibility, but it's also been the most special thing of my career because even though I'm not the person who started it, I've been there along with a couple of other people from the beginning. And so it's been really amazing to see it grow and develop into the agency it is today. And like, I think that it by joining an agency like that, it was like an accelerated path to learning so fast because I was responsible for so much. There wasn't levels and levels and levels above me. There was Aaron and another ACD and other people, and then there was only a couple of account people. It was really like, it's on you. You got to figure it out. And so I think it was really cool because I got so many opportunities. I was able to tackle every brief that came through the door, which was super cool. And I think it's like helped me just get exposure to so many different things. And now we have, I don't know how many staff, but we've grown a lot, which is really cool to see, um, as someone that's been there for since the beginning, pretty much. Oh, you're on mute.
How was the change from being an art director to ACD, so Associate Creative Director? And you say, "Oh my God, I'm doing this leap, another leap now, and another change," and or you feel like, "I think I can do it. It's about time." How you feel it?
So I was promoted not that long ago, so it hasn't been that long. But yeah, I think that it's definitely a really good step. I have previously, before kind of moving into this new role, I was working a lot with the junior teams in the agency and mentoring and helping give feedback. And I really learned that I like that role of working with people and helping them grow and teaching them. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was a really awesome thing because I think sometimes people get promoted to creative directors and they don't necessarily enjoy the leading part. And so I think it's been really great in that sense because I love to sort of, really get to know and work with people. And then from a creative standpoint, I think it's just more motivation to be the best creative I can be, to push my work, to really try and perfect my craft of art direction as much as I can. But yeah, I definitely feel like I've had a very fast track to ACD. Wasn't something I was asking for or expecting. But I think it's really nice that my agency has that faith in me, to deliver, hopefully. But I think regardless of title, I just love being creative. I love advertising. I love the work, and so that's all I really care about.
I think it comes back again to the soft skill part Besides, I think you have a bunch of experience now, and I don't think students realize when you go to you're a very good student, but when you're a staff in a big agency, there's a lot of good creatives there. It's like a selection of good
Yeah.
people. Like oh my god, they can see everybody working on their top of their game. So I think you begin to uh, be like a sponge and say, "Oh my God, this person did this way, and this person has this style," and you begin to grow and grow and grow until at one time you begin to, as you're saying, managing junior teams and try to get your 2 cents on in a good perspective to make the work better, so the craft better and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I cannot I guarantee you'll be a great ACD. I cannot have anything just to know you, Shanice, for sure. I will open the mic now to Maggie.
Yeah, so kind of backpedaling on something you were mentioning earlier about how when you were first looking at jobs and you met your future boss at the ADC, and you were like with your partner and you said maybe you guys were going to separate and maybe you're going to stay together. I'm assuming you've swapped partners over the years. How has that
Yes.
process been, and how do you get acclimatized to a new creative in the room?
That's a really good question because I actually just got a new partner, grad from Mohawk, Ryan Chason.
Oh yes,
Um,
amazing guy.
yeah,
He's
he's
amazing.
so awesome. So, um, in my first internship, I had one partner, and then for my second internship and 2 years at Ogilvy, I had another partner, and then at AB, I had another partner that just left, and now I have a new partner. So I think the thing about working with different people is it can get comfortable. Obviously, having a partner, that's what kind of builds that special sauce because you get a bond between the two of you, and I think that's great. But I also think that when you try to work with other people, it can really help push you. So I know that it can be scary sometimes to try work with other people, or it can be more comfortable to work with the same person. But when you work with other people, it kind of gives you a little insight into how other people brainstorm, how other people do things. And to get like used to working with someone else, I'd say it's kind of like dating, like you kind of get to know someone, you might know a little bit about them, and then the more you know work together, brainstorm together, you get to bring out your, like for me, I get more silly, I'm weird, like I get more, I try to be like as real and honest as I can be because I find that's the best way to get used to another creative, because at the end of the day you're both hopefully working towards the same goal of trying to be, trying to create like awesome work. And so hopefully your personalities will match, but sometimes they don't, and that's okay. So you'll see in the industry, some people will get shuffled around from team to team, or teams will break up. That's just a part of it. But I think sometimes when people find like I'll call it their perfect match, they do stay together for a long time. So it really just depends on the person.
Yeah.
One
So
more, one more, Maggie.
yeah, kind of also piggybacking off that, how apart from like I guess separating the creatives, but like if there is creative conflict, how is that dealt with?
So I think like speaking from the experience of like from the team itself, like our director and copywriter, I think that there's always going to be times that you disagree. You might think an idea is like the best thing ever, and your creative partner is like doesn't get it. It's like that's stupid, But I think it's about respecting each other's point of view and different life experiences. And I think you kind of strike a balance as a team. I've heard some people say, if we both don't like an idea, it doesn't go to the creative director. But then I've heard other teams say, no, like if my creative partner likes an idea, we'll present it because we're a team. So I think you kind of just develop a way of being with one another where you deal with the conflict. But then, of course, there could be times where maybe you're feeling like the partner is not the right fit, and then that's what your creative director is there for. You can always go to your creative director, and hopefully you'll build a relationship with that creative director where you can talk about your ambitions or your goals, and maybe if you're not fitting with someone. So there's always ways around it.
Perfect. Wow.
I will ask you now, Maggie. What is your, and I want Dan to Shanice to comment on whatever you say. What is your biggest fear right now when it comes to the program and going to the industry?
If I'm going to be completely honest, it's not doing well when we submit things for awards. That's a complete honesty right there.
Well, okay. I will let
No,
Shanice.
you go for it.
Don't worry about this kind of stuff. For me, it's I see the effort you put in. I see how you put the sweat and the idea. You do everything that you can. It's a lot of time is very subjective, so you don't need to worry too much about this. Trust me, you're doing good work, solid work. So we'll get there. But I'll let Shanice know.
I mean, I was going to say something pretty similar. I think awards they're great, even if you have, one or whatever, just to be like, to show you try to put in the effort, and shows an interest in the industry. And I don't think that having awards or not having them is the mark of a good creative. You can have an amazing book and not have the little icons of like, I won this or I won this.
I agree.
It's all about what's in the book, and who you are as a person. So don't stress about the results. The fact that you even cared enough to put in the effort to try is awesome, because not everybody does that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see how much effort you put in your last project, for example.
Oh, yeah.
For the one, so, yes. So, all right. So, Shanice, now we get the time. First of all, I'm super impressed with your career so far, and I
Oh, thank
guarantee
you.
your career will go fly away even more from now on. I want to ask you during this whole time, probably you do portfolio reviews and book reviews. Take a look on work from different people. Don't need to name college. Don't need to name people. I just want you to say what is the biggest mistakes you usually see, and what kind of suggestions you have for students to have in their book today. Yes, because
Yeah.
every year change.
So for me, I would say that the thing that is super important is to clearly state the insight and idea and campaign name right off the top of off the get-go. I find that some students, like, even if you edit a case study, which is awesome, I think you should still have a really simple way to show me the idea in like 3 seconds. And I think that some students, because you think it's like the greatest idea ever, you like to bury the idea as like a crazy buildup, for like a wow moment. That's like a minute and a half into the case study. I think it's really helpful to just have a super simple, here was the problem and here's how we solved it, because that's like, I can immediately see, okay, what an idea is. And then the other thing I would say is kind of stopping when an idea is like getting good. So maybe you have the activation, so maybe you're like, oh, we're going to partner with this company and we're going to do this cool thing. But then, show me what it would look like on social media. Show me what it would look like as a transit shelter ad, whatever, just to show me that that it's not just like the little idea, which is obviously important, but how to create ads. So how to talk to people on Instagram or on like through, even if it's like a cool idea through email, who knows, right? But show me that you know that it's like a campaign, not just a, a partnership between something and something. That's one thing I'm noticing, you know?
Stuff that burn your book right away or in interviews, what it would say.
Um, I think that the if you're going to be an art director, you're going to be a writer.
You can be brutally honest.
So I'll speak for art direction perspective right now. I don't expect anyone to be perfect, but if you have glaring design errors or just bad bad choices, it's going to make me question your ability to have a good eye for design. Because being someone that went through school, I know that, you're not going to be like amazing at the start of your career, but you should show the ability to have a nice layout, a good choice of typeface or whatever. I think for me, that's a big red flag is just the lack of that. And I feel like, especially when you're trying to get your start as a student, you should be trying to perfect all those little details because that's what you have to show for yourself, right? And then as a writer, I would say not enough headlines or things where it really shows your ability to be concise, because I know that obviously there's case study videos and things like that that show the idea, but I do think it's important to be show creative directors, here's how I write a print ad, or here's how I write a social post or whatever, because that's a lot of what you'll be doing at first.
Do you think, because I can imagine how busy it is being a ACD or senior art director, can you say like, oh, I don't have time for those case study videos. If I see a few pieces and they're about me, I can get a look and feel of how the person is and ask for interview.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, that's usually what I do. And I do appreciate like when they do have the problem and the idea written up, because then I can get a quick nugget. Sometimes I'll watch, enough of the case study to get the idea, but sometimes, yeah, we're very busy, right? And so I'll scan through the work, and then that gives you enough of a sense, and then the about me, of course, gives you who they are as a person. So I agree. I definitely do that where I kind of pan and scan and then I'll dig deeper into it if I want to make sure I'm respecting people's time. So of course I'll watch videos and really dig into it if I'm meeting with them, but if I'm scanning their book because they've reached out to me, then it's not always a thorough watch through of every video.
How many pieces you would say it's a good combination of to respect your time, let's say?
I would say, like, as a student, or I don't know, it doesn't matter who you are. I would say like having 5 pieces in your book is good, because I think with that you could have, say you have 2 case studies, and then maybe you have a print series, and then maybe you have a full, like an integrated campaign as another idea that shows like social and print and out of home. And I think having, or even like, maybe if you're an art director, one piece in your book. I remember mine was that layout assignment we did in second year with the magazine, and that was like to show that I'm interested in design and art direction, and I care about, the craft of it. So I think not everything in your book has to be like a full blown campaign, but I think just showing your creative abilities is important.
Maggie, go ahead.
Um, I also really liked the magazine assignment. So it's really, I guess it's interesting for me to hear you say that too, because I gear more towards like the copywriting side. And for me, when I was building that assignment, I just really liked working with the fonts and the typography. So when you're working with your copywriter, or when you were working with your copywriter, because now you're ACD.
I still have a copywriter though, so
Okay.
definitely need one of those.
So then, as an ACD, then how what does your day look like with your copywriter, and when you're working with your art director and your other copywriters, how does that dynamic work?
So I think it's probably like it depends on the size of your agency. So for us, we have a creative department. It's not huge. So for me, right, how I spend my days is I have, a good portion of my day I'm still working on my own stuff because, I'm briefed on stuff where I'm expected to deliver creative ideas. So I'll be collaborating with my writer, my ACD writer. And then there's also projects where I'm overseeing junior teams on smaller projects, maybe social briefs, things like that. And then there's also projects where it might be a bigger brief where the junior team was also briefed on it because, you never know who's going to come up with an amazing idea. And then me and who, my ACD will help them kind of filter through ideas. And then we might all collectively meet with in this case, our CCO or our CDs. So it really depends. And obviously there's going to be times when you're in production for an idea. So you're, in edits or you're on set or things like that. So I would say like right now for me, my time is split pretty fairly between like doing my own creative work and then also helping others kind of bring their creative work to life as well.
Must be really rewarding.
It's a fun job. I love it. Like, even when you're making social posts, like most people don't even like their jobs. So I think we're pretty lucky if we like or love our jobs.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you, Janice, on that. And it's always it's never boring, and it's always great. It's rewarding. Let's say that, and especially working with students too for me. But I
Yeah.
think you have the same kind of mentoring of the juniors. And all right, so now we go into the final part of this conversation. I want to ask you, what is the biggest mistakes juniors do when they start?
It's a good question. I would say I think the biggest mistake or one of them, I don't, is maybe not pushing enough. I think that sometimes, you know, they might not explore enough visual directions or explore enough headlines or bring enough ideas to the table. I think that they can, and I think this might be partly because when you're in the real world, you now have like this different kind of time crunch. So you have to learn to work faster as you get more experience. But I would say that yeah, bringing options to the table or going beyond what was asked. If you're told to use this image and do this, but maybe show us something that doesn't use that image, something we wouldn't have thought of that goes beyond to show me that you're, eager and you have really creative thought behind it. And then the other thing I would say is not asking questions, which I think I mentioned before, but I would say not asking questions is super important because, like I keep saying, no one expects you to be perfect. So asking questions allows us to help each other because we can help you understand a brief more or help you understand what is required for this client presentation or all of those things that can like prevent hiccups when you're in a check-in with your creative director or something and you realize you didn't understand the brief or something like that. So I think that's students or interns should ask more questions always.
I'll open the mic to Maggie for her last few considerations and questions to Shanice.
Yeah. So, if you remember what it was like to be in your fourth semester, what message would you give to current second year, second semester students?
I would say it's never too early to start like perfecting your book. I would say that like you should treat third year, first semester kind of as a testing ground for networking. Get out there. It's not too early to start having those conversations. Treat it like you're in the final phase before starting the job interviews, starting getting out there. So as much as you can, try to really perfect your book over the summer. Keep the skills sharp. Try to, if you're a writer, you know, practice your tone of voice, your skills. And if you're an art director, try to learn, do you know all the shortcuts in Photoshop? Do you know the shortcuts in Illustrator? Learn as many things as you can, because it's going to help you out in the long run. So treat it as like a pre third year, I guess.
And
Go ahead.
when you were building your book, how often did you go to Jeff and Raph to ask for feedback in the beginning before you even got to third year?
Probably a lot. I feel like I was constantly showing Jeff and Raph stuff, and I think Raph, I was probably always showing you layouts or things I did, even just not like as formal, like, hey, this is finished, but like just advice, and use the people around you the same way you will when you're in the industry. You use all the people around you. You should use your profs as well in the same way, because having other people's perspective and getting help is a good thing. So yeah, I probably bugged them a lot.
Never, no, you never any trouble, Shanice. We love to give feedback and see your work. So because we know that you're put all your heart into it since that time, and I guarantee until now. Shanice, thank you so much for the time. Maggie, too. If students want to contact you, what is the best way to contact you to show their book and have a chat, Shanice?
Yeah, probably through LinkedIn. If you find me on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Chenice Piercy. That's the best way. I always, have LinkedIn on my phone, so it's easy to see if someone messages me. That's usually the best way to find me, and then from there, usually I set up like a meeting to chat with students. So pretty easy.
So thank you, Maggie, for being here. Thank you both of you, and until the next episode, I think it'll be in 2 weeks of Rascast. We'll see you there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.